Good morning, and welcome to the next drash. The name of this drash is, What is Hashmal? I must make a preliminary note before we start this dvar. And that note is that my Hebrew pronunciation is very bad, and I apologize for this. I have a problem with my guttural sounds. I have a problem with the CH sound, Hashmal. So I apologize for that in advance. With this said, I'm not ready to begin the dvar. And I saw, and behold, a tempest was coming from the north, a huge cloud, and flaming fire with a brightness around it. And from its midst, it was like the color of the hashmal from the midst of the fire. This is a quotation from Ezekiel 1:4. So, what is the hashmal? In modern Hebrew, the word hashmal is used for electricity. But here it means speaking silence, or a thin voice of silence. The latter is more accurate. Whose voice? The voice in question is the voice of God, which breaks cedars and makes the mountains skip like rams. So, why does Ezekiel describe the voice of the Lord as being a thin voice of silence? One answer is that Ezekiel is saying something about the nature of his prophecy, as well as about the voice of God. According to our sages, there are many modes and gradations of prophecy. Two of the most obvious ones are seeing, where the prophet sees a God-given vision, and hearing, where the prophet hears the voice of God. Many of our sages teach that in prophecy, seeing is superior to hearing. Ezekiel is disagreeing here. He's saying that he saw first and heard last. Since the voice of God wasn't in the displays of the tempest, the cloud, or the fire, which can be seen, but only in the thin voice of silence, which can barely be heard, I take Ezekiel to mean that in his prophecy, hearing is superior to seeing. How so? Well, seeing might be believing, but seeing has its limitations. For God is incorporeal. He has no form to see. As God told Moshe Rabbeinu, no one can see my face and live. Just ask Ben Zoma, who entered Pardes, gazed, and died. But one can hear what one cannot see, and one can hear things that are quite a distance from and not within the sight of the hearer. In the spiritual world, there is no space or time. So distance means resemblance. The further away from God someone is, the less he or she resembles the Creator. The closer one is to the Almighty, the more he or she is said to resemble Him. Now, everyone knows that there is a vast and unbridgeable gap between God and man in terms of resemblance. While it is true that man is created in the image and likeness of God, God's nature is all about bestowing, and man's nature is all about the will to receive. There is in God no will to receive at all. For what would he receive, and from whom would he receive it? That's why God had to create the will to receive. Man, his opposite number, his Ezer Kenegdo, in order to accomplish the purpose of creation. For a thing is most fully realized by, through, and in contrast to its opposite. One can only see so far across this vast and unbridgeable gap. At a certain point, one becomes unable to see even the radiance of God's glory, let alone God himself. But God allows us to catch a glimpse of his actions in history. His face no one has seen and no one can see, not even Moshe Rabbeinu, who prophesied at will. That's why God spoke rather than painted the world into existence like a cosmic Leonardo da Vinci. God wants us to reach him across this vast and unbridgeable gap. So what does he do? He shouts. But we are so far away that his thunderous, inherently creative voice frequently goes unnoticed in the world, with only his prophets hearing it. And with the sole exception of Moshe Rabbeinu, even then, they heard only a thin voice of silence, and they heard it only intermittently.